The first morning of training began with a 5-mile run through the station's gravity simulation zone. The gravity was set to twice the normal level of most homeworlds. Danny felt like he was carrying another person on his back as he ran. The wreck sprinters finished first. They barely looked tired. The Gorath heavies came next, their stone bodies somehow able to move fast despite their weight. The Kethari followed close behind, their 4 legs giving them perfect balance even in the crushing gravity. Danny finished last. His lungs were burning. His legs felt like they were filled with fire. When he crossed the finish line, he collapsed onto his hands and knees and vomited on the deck. Commander Varela walked over and stood above him. Her shadow blocked out the lights. "Pathetic," she said. "The weakest trainee in Academy history. I did not think it was possible for any creature to be this useless." Danny wiped his mouth and forced himself to stand up. His legs were shaking, but he stayed on his feet. "I finished," he said. "You finished last, but I finished." Varela's eyes narrowed. She leaned down until her face was close to his. Being last means nothing. In the wild, the slowest creature gets eaten. Remember that, human? The next exercise was combat training. Trainees were paired together and told to fight until one could not continue. Varela assigned Danny to face a Kethari trainee named Crix. Crix was smaller than Varela, but still 7 feet tall with the same razor claws and armored scales. He looked at Danny the way a cat looks at a mouse. "Try not to die too quickly," Crix said. "I want to enjoy this." The fight lasted 11 seconds. Crix hit Danny 3 times with his tail. The first blow knocked Danny to the ground. The second cracked 2 of his ribs. The third sent him sliding across the training floor and into the wall. Danny tried to get up. His body would not obey. He tasted blood in his mouth. "Match complete," announced the training computer. "Winner, Crix of the Kethari." Varela walked over to where Danny lay on the floor. "Take him to medical. Have his bones repaired. He will need to be ready for tomorrow's training." A medical drone lifted Danny onto a floating stretcher and carried him away. As he left the training room, he heard Crix laughing. "Same time tomorrow, human?" Crix called after him. "I promise to break different bones this time." The medical bay was cold and white. A robotic doctor examined Danny's injuries and injected him with healing compounds that made his bones knit back together in hours instead of weeks. The process was painful. Danny did not make a sound. "Your species is fragile," the medical robot observed. "Your bones break easily. Your skin tears easily. Your organs are poorly protected. Why did your government send you here?" Danny lay on the table and stared at the ceiling. "Because someone had to be first. You will likely die here. You understand this?" "Yes. And yet you will continue training?" Danny closed his eyes. "Yes." The robot was silent for a moment. "Interesting," it finally said. "You may return to your barracks when the healing cycle is complete." The next morning, Danny was back at formation. His ribs still ached, but he could breathe without pain. Varela saw him and her mandibles clicked in surprise. "The human returns," she announced. "I expected you to quit after yesterday." "I do not quit," Danny said. "We will see about that." The first month continued the same way. Every day brought new exercises designed to test strength, speed, endurance, and fighting ability. Danny failed at almost everything. He was slower than the fast species. He was weaker than the strong species. He could not match the natural weapons of any other trainee. But something strange began to happen as the weeks passed. Danny kept showing up every morning. No matter how badly he had been beaten the day before, he was there at formation. His body was covered in bruises that would have put most species in medical for days. He had broken bones, torn muscles, and cuts that left scars. But he never missed a single training session. The other trainees started to notice. Torvin, the young Gorath who had mocked Danny on his first day, approached him in the mess hall one evening. Danny was eating alone, as he always did. No one wanted to sit with the human. Torvin sat down across from him. His stone face was unreadable. "How are you still standing?" Torvin asked. "I saw Crix break 2 of your ribs yesterday. And the day before, Syra dislocated your shoulder. Any normal creature would be in medical for a week after those injuries." Danny looked up from his food. "Humans heal fast when we need to. But the pain alone should have stopped you. Pain is how the body tells us to rest, to stop, to protect ourselves from further damage." Danny thought about how to explain it. He had grown up learning about human evolution, about the traits that had made his species survive against predators with claws and fangs and speed. "Pain is just information," Danny finally said. "It tells me I am still alive. If I can feel pain, it means I have not lost yet." Torvin stared at him for a long time. His black eyes showed no emotion, but something had changed in the way he looked at Danny. "You are strange, human," Torvin said. "Your body is weak. Your weapons are nothing. But your mind—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Your mind does not know how to stop." Danny shrugged. "Where I come from, stopping meant dying. My ancestors did not have claws or armor. They survived because they refused to give up. They just kept going until they won or died trying. And if you die here, then I die. But I will not quit." Torvin stood up slowly. For the first time since Danny had arrived at the academy, an alien looked at him with something other than contempt. "I will be watching you, human," Torvin said. "I want to see what happens when something refuses to break." He walked away, leaving Danny alone with his food. Across the mess hall, Commander Varela had been watching the exchange. Her yellow eyes followed Torvin as he left, then moved back to Danny. The human trainee had finished his meal and was walking toward the exit. Moving slowly because of his injuries, but moving all the same. Varela did not understand. By every measure, the human should have quit by now. He should have admitted defeat and gone home to his primitive planet. Instead, he kept coming back. It was irritating. It was illogical. And for the first time in her long career, Commander Varela felt something she had not felt in years: uncertainty. The transport shuttle landed with a heavy thud on the metal deck. Danny Cole grabbed his bag and walked toward the exit door. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his face calm. He was about to step into a world where humans were considered the weakest species in the galaxy. The door opened and bright light hit his eyes. Danny blinked and stepped forward onto the deck of the Galactic Hunter Academy. This massive space station floated in orbit around a dead planet. It was the most famous training facility in the known universe. The deadliest hunters from 100 different worlds came here to prove themselves. And now, for the first time in history, a human had been accepted. Danny was 23 years old. He had brown hair cut short and a lean body built from years of military training on Earth. He was not tall by human standards, just under 6 feet. But compared to most of the aliens waiting in the hangar, he looked like a child standing among giants. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. Danny counted at least 15 different species. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had skin that looked like rock or metal. All of them were big. All of them had natural weapons like claws, fangs, or horns. And all of them were staring at him with the same expression. Contempt. A low clicking sound filled the hangar. Danny recognized it from his briefings. It was laughter. The aliens were laughing at him. He kept walking forward, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. His instructors back on Earth had warned him about this moment. Humanity had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago. Most alien species still thought of humans as primitive creatures, barely smart enough to build spaceships, a massive figure stepped out from the crowd and blocked his path. Danny had to tilt his head back to look at her face. She was at least 9 feet tall, with 4 arms and a body covered in shimmering blue and green scales. Her eyes were yellow with black slits, like a snake. Her mouth was filled with teeth that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. Each of her 4 hands ended in claws that could tear a human apart in seconds. This was Commander Varela of the Cathari species. Danny had seen her picture in his mission files. The Cathari were the top predators in the galaxy. They had dominated the apex hunter rankings for over 300 years. Varela herself had killed more dangerous creatures than any other living hunter, and she was going to be his primary instructor. Varela circled around Danny slowly, her clawed feet clicking on the deck. Her tail swished behind her like a massive whip. She leaned down and sniffed at him, her nostrils flaring. "This is the human representative?" she said. Her voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "This soft little thing?" More clicking laughter filled the hangar. Varela reached out with one of her clawed hands and poked Danny in the chest. The claw was sharp enough to cut through his uniform and leave a thin scratch on his skin. Danny did not move. "No claws," Varela announced to the crowd. "No fangs. No armor, no venom. Thin skin that breaks at the slightest touch." She leaned closer until her face was just inches from his. Her breath smelled like rotting meat. "Tell me, little human, what weapons did your species evolve? What makes you think you can stand among hunters?" Danny met her yellow eyes. "I was selected by my people, Commander. I intend to complete the training." Varela stared at him for a long moment. Then her mandibles clicked rapidly in what Danny now understood was uncontrolled laughter. "You intend to complete the training," she repeated, turning to face the crowd. "Did you hear that? The soft little prey animal intends to become a hunter." The hangar erupted in clicking, growling, and hissing sounds. Every species had its own way of expressing amusement, but the meaning was the same. They all thought he was a joke. A tall creature with gray skin like stone stepped forward. Danny recognized the species from his files. This was a Goroth, a being whose body was naturally armored and nearly impossible to damage. The Goroth trainee was young, probably around Danny's age, with small black eyes set deep in his rocky face. "Perhaps the humans sent him as a sacrifice," the Goroth said. "An offering to show respect to their betters. Or maybe they sent him as entertainment," added another voice. This came from a Vrex, a species known for incredible speed. The Vrex looked almost like a giant insect, with long limbs and a thin body built for running. "We can watch him fail every test and laugh at his weakness." Varela held up one of her hands, and the crowd went silent. "The human will be assigned to my training group," she announced. "I want to personally observe this experiment." She looked back at Danny, and her eyes narrowed. "You will wash out within the first cycle. I guarantee it. But until then, I will enjoy watching you struggle." She turned and walked away, her heavy footsteps echoing through the hangar. The crowd parted before her like water flowing around a rock. A small drone floated down from the ceiling and stopped in front of Danny's face. A mechanical voice spoke from its speaker. "Human trainee designation. Cole. Danny, you have been assigned to Barracks 7. Please follow the guidelines to your quarters. Training begins at first light cycle tomorrow." The drone flew away. Blue lights appeared on the floor, creating a path toward a distant doorway. Danny picked up his bag and started walking. He could feel the eyes of every alien in the hangar following him. He could hear their clicking and growling as they talked about him in their own languages. He did not need a translator to know what they were saying. They thought he was going to fail. They thought he was weak. They thought humans were nothing but prey animals who had somehow stumbled into space. Danny reached the doorway and paused. He turned around and looked back at the crowd of alien predators. They were still watching him, still laughing, still so certain of their own superiority. Danny thought about his ancestors. He thought about the early humans who had faced lions and wolves and bears with nothing but sharpened sticks. He thought about how those soft, clawless, fangless creatures had somehow become the dominant species on their planet, not through strength, not through natural weapons, but through something else. Something these aliens could not understand. Danny turned and walked through the doorway. Tomorrow, his training would begin. Tomorrow, he would show them what humans were really made of. He was not afraid. He had been preparing for this his entire life, and unlike these aliens, Danny Cole did not know how to quit. 3 months into the training, whispers started spreading through the academy. The trainees talked about the human in quiet voices when they thought no one was listening. The instructors discussed him in their private meetings. Even the maintenance drones seemed to pause when Danny walked by, as if they were programmed to observe something unusual. The human would not quit. More importantly, he was getting better. Not in the ways that made sense. He was still slower than the fast species. He was still weaker than the strong species. But something else was happening. Something that made the other trainees uncomfortable. Danny Cole was learning. He was adapting. And he was doing it faster than anyone had expected. Commander Varela noticed it first. During combat training, Danny stopped trying to match his opponents in direct strength. Instead, he started watching them. He studied how they moved, where they put their weight, what patterns they followed when they attacked. Then he started using that knowledge against them. Crix, the Cathari who had broken Danny's ribs on the first day, faced him again in the training ring. Crix charged forward with the same attack he had used before. His tail swung in a wide arc aimed at Danny's chest. But this time, Danny was not there. He had stepped to the side at the last moment, letting the tail pass inches from his body. Before Crix could recover, Danny moved inside his guard and struck him 3 times in the soft tissue between his scales. Crix roared in pain and stumbled backward. Danny did not press the attack. He simply stepped back and waited. Lucky, Crix snarled. You got lucky. They fought again. This time, Crix was more careful. He used his claws instead of his tail. But Danny had been watching Crix fight for 3 months. He knew the Cathari favored his upper right arm. He knew Crix dropped his guard slightly before each strike. He knew exactly how long it took for Crix to reset after a missed attack. Danny dodged the first claw swipe. He blocked the second with a technique he had modified from ancient human martial arts. Then he drove his elbow into Crix's throat, right where the scales were thinnest. Krix went down. He was not seriously hurt, but he was stunned. By the time he recovered, Danny had already stepped away from the ring. The training room was silent. Every trainee was staring at Danny with wide eyes. Match complete, the training computer announced. Winner, Danny Cole of Earth. Varela said nothing, but her claws dug into the metal railing she was holding, leaving deep scratches in the steel. The next test was a wilderness survival exercise on a hostile jungle moon. Teams of 5 trainees were dropped into the wilderness and given 1 week to reach the extraction point. The jungle was filled with predators, poisonous plants, and environmental hazards designed to kill the unprepared. Danny's team was separated on the second day when a pack of native predators attacked their camp. The team scattered in different directions. Danny found himself alone in an alien jungle, with nothing but a basic survival kit and his own skills. Most species would have panicked. They would have tried to find their team immediately, moving through the dangerous jungle without caution. Many would have died within the first day. Danny did not panic. He found a safe hiding spot and took stock of his situation. He had water tablets, a knife, a length of rope, and emergency rations for 2 days. The extraction point was approximately 40 miles to the north. His team could be anywhere. He started moving, but not toward the extraction point. He moved slowly and carefully, studying the jungle around him. He looked at the plants to identify which ones were safe to eat. He watched the animal tracks to understand what predators lived in this area. He listened to the sounds of the jungle to learn its rhythms. For 3 days, Danny tracked his scattered teammates. He slept in short bursts, never more than 2 hours at a time. He ate insects and plants he had identified as safe. When predators came near, he hid or climbed, or simply stayed so still that they passed him by. On the 3rd day, he found the first member of his team. It was Syra, a female Kethari who had once laughed at him with Varela. She was injured, her leg caught in a natural trap that had broken her ankle. "Human?" she hissed when she saw him. "Leave me. Save yourself." Danny ignored her. He freed her from the trap, treated her wound with supplies from his kit, and built a stretcher from branches. Then he started dragging her toward the extraction point. "What are you doing?" Syra demanded. "I am too heavy. You will never make it carrying me." "Then we will go slowly," Danny said. "We will both die." "Maybe, but I am not leaving you behind." They found the rest of their team over the next 2 days. Danny had mapped the predator movements in his head and guided the group around the most dangerous areas. When they finally reached the extraction point, they were the last team to arrive. But they were all alive. Varela was waiting at the extraction shuttle. She looked at Danny's team, counting the survivors. 5 had gone in. 5 had come out. It was more than most teams could say. "How?" demanded Syra, staring at Danny with something close to fear in her eyes. "How did you survive that long alone in the jungle? How did you find all of us? How did you keep going without rest?" Danny sat down heavily on the shuttle deck. He was exhausted. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. He had lost weight because he had given most of his food to the injured teammates, but he was alive. "Humans do not need much sleep when survival is at stake," he explained. "We can go days on very little rest. Our bodies can keep functioning long after other species would collapse. It is how our ancestors hunted." "Hunted?" Varela stepped forward, her yellow eyes fixed on Danny. "Explain." Danny looked up at her. For once, there was no mockery in her voice. Only genuine curiosity. "On my world, humans were not the fastest or strongest animals," Danny said. "But we developed a way of hunting that no other species could match. We called it persistence hunting. We would find our prey and start following it. The prey would run away. It was faster than us. It would escape easily." He paused and took a drink of water. "But we did not stop following. We walked after it. Hour after hour. Mile after mile. The prey would run again. And again. And again. But eventually, it would get tired. Its muscles would fail. It would overheat because it could not cool itself while running. And we would still be there, walking toward it, never stopping, never resting." The shuttle was completely silent. Every alien was staring at Danny with expressions that ranged from disbelief to horror. "You hunted by never stopping?" Syra whispered. "You just followed until your prey collapsed?" "Yes, nothing could escape us. Nothing could hide from us. Because we never, ever stopped." Varela's scales had gone pale. For the first time since Danny had arrived at the academy, she looked at him not with contempt or amusement, but with something else entirely. Fear. "You are not prey animals," she said slowly. "You never were." Danny met her eyes. "No, Commander. We were never prey. We were just patient hunters waiting for the right moment to show what we could do." The shuttle lifted off and carried them back to the academy. Nobody spoke for the entire journey. They were all too busy thinking about what they had just learned. Somewhere in the galaxy, there was a species of soft, clawless, fangless creatures who hunted by never giving up. They would follow you until you could not run anymore. They would outlast you, outthink you, and outwork you. And now, one of them was training to become an apex hunter. The universe had just become a much more interesting place. The final test of the Academy was called the Apex Challenge. Every trainee who had survived the program would face it. Most would fail. Some would die. Only the best would earn the right to call themselves Apex Hunters. Danny stood with the other trainees in the briefing room as Commander Varela explained the rules. A massive holographic display showed a planet covered in red forests and black mountains. It looked like something from a nightmare. "This is a simulated world," Varela said. "You will be dropped onto the surface and given one standard week to survive. The planet is populated with the deadliest predators in our database. Creatures that have destroyed entire colonies. Monsters that have killed the best hunters in the galaxy." She pressed a button and the display changed. Now it showed the planet divided into colored zones. Each zone has different levels of difficulty. Green zones contain basic predators. Yellow zones have intermediate threats. Red zones hold the most dangerous creatures we have ever encountered. Her eyes moved across the room and stopped on Danny. Trainees have been assigned to zones based on their performance during training. Danny already knew what was coming. He had seen the assignment list that morning. Human trainee Cole has been assigned to Zone 7, Varela announced. A red zone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Zone 7 was the worst zone on the planet. It was home to the Skorax, pack hunters that had killed more sentient beings than any other predator species in recorded history. No trainee had ever cleared Zone 7 alone. Most who entered it did not survive. "That is a death sentence," Torvin said quietly from beside Danny. The Garth had become something close to a friend over the past months. "She is trying to kill you." "Maybe," Danny agreed. "Or maybe she is trying to see what I can really do." You cannot defeat the Skorax. They hunt in packs of 20 or more. They communicate telepathically. They never stop pursuing prey until it is dead. Even our strongest hunters fall to them. Danny looked at Torvin. "They never stop pursuing prey?" "Sounds familiar." The dropships launched the next morning. Danny sat alone in his pod as it fell through the atmosphere of the simulated world. Through the window, he could see the red forests of Zone 7 spreading out below him. Somewhere in those trees, the Skorax were waiting. The pod landed hard. Danny grabbed his survival pack and stepped out into the alien forest. The trees were massive, with dark red leaves that blocked out most of the light. The air smelled like copper and rotting vegetation. Strange sounds echoed through the shadows. His first instinct was to start hunting, to find the Skorax and attack them before they found him. But Danny pushed that instinct away. He was not here to be reckless. He was here to win. For the first 2 days, Danny did not engage with any predators. He moved through the forest silently, watching everything. He studied the Skorax from a distance, using the shadows and the terrain to stay hidden. He learned how they moved, how they communicated, how they hunted. The Skorax were impressive creatures. They stood 8 feet tall on 4 legs, with armored bodies and jaws that could crush steel. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. When they hunted, they spread out in a wide formation and drove their prey into ambush points where other pack members waited. But Danny noticed something. The Skorax had a weakness. They relied on their pack communication to coordinate attacks. When one member detected prey, it would signal the others, and they would all converge on that location. It was efficient and deadly. It was also predictable. On the 3rd day, Danny started his plan. He found a Skorax patrol and let them see him. Then he ran. The Skorax howled and gave chase. signaling to their pack members. Danny led them through the forest, staying just far enough ahead to remain alive. He ran until he reached a narrow canyon he had found during his scouting. The Skorax followed him into the canyon. They were faster than him on open ground, but the narrow space slowed them down. They had to move single file instead of spreading out. Danny climbed the canyon wall and waited at the top. When the first Skorax appeared below him, he pushed a boulder he had loosened earlier. The rock fell and crushed the creature beneath it. The pack scattered in confusion. Their telepathic link told them their member was dead, but they did not understand how. Danny was already gone, moving to his next position. Over the next 2 days, Danny repeated the strategy. He used the terrain against the Skorax. He set traps using materials from the forest. He created false trails that led them into dead ends or dangerous areas. He turned their own pack behavior against them by killing isolated members and watching the others waste time searching for enemies that were not there. The Skorax grew afraid. This was new to them. They were used to being the hunters, not the hunted. They started making mistakes. They became paranoid. Some refused to leave the main group, which made them easier to avoid. Others went searching alone, which made them easier to kill by day 5. Danny had eliminated half the pack. The remaining Skorax had gathered in their central den, afraid to venture out. On the observation deck of the academy, the instructors watched Danny's progress on their screens. They had expected him to die within the first day. Instead, they were watching something unprecedented. "He is hunting them," whispered one instructor. "The human is hunting the Skorax." "That is impossible," said another. "The Skorax are apex predators. Nothing hunts them." But the screens did not lie. Danny Cole, the soft little human that everyone had mocked, was systematically destroying the most dangerous pack hunters in the galaxy. Lorella stood at the front of the observation deck. Her eyes were fixed on the screen showing Danny's position. He was moving toward the Skorax den. He was going to finish what he started. "Should we stop the simulation?" someone asked. "If he attacks their den directly, they will overwhelm him with numbers." Varela shook her head slowly. "No, let him continue. I want to see what happens." Danny reached the den as the sun was setting. The remaining Skorax were inside, huddled together for protection. They knew something was out there. Something that had killed half their pack. Something they could not understand or defeat. Danny did not charge in. He did not try to fight them all at once. Instead, he waited outside the den and started making noise. He threw rocks. He shouted. He banged sticks against trees. The Skorax grew angry. Their instincts demanded they attack the threat. But their fear held them back. For hours they stayed in the den, listening to the human outside. Then Danny set fire to the forest around the den. He had spent days gathering dry materials and placing them in a circle around the Skorax territory. Now he lit them all at once. The fire spread quickly through the red trees, creating a wall of flame that surrounded the den. The Skorax had 2 choices: stay in the den and burn, or run through the flames and face the human waiting outside. They chose to run. Danny was ready. As each Skorax burst through the flames, confused and panicked, he struck. He used traps he had prepared. He used the terrain. He used their own fear and confusion against them. One by one, the mighty Skorax fell. When the last one died, Danny stood alone in the burning forest. His body was covered in burns and cuts. His clothes were torn. He was exhausted beyond anything he had ever experienced, but he was alive. He walked back to the clearing where he had landed and sat down to wait for extraction. Around him, the simulation began to shut down as the Academy's computers registered that Zone 7 had been cleared. On the observation deck, no one spoke for a long time. The instructors stared at their screens in disbelief. The other trainees who had already been extracted watched the footage with wide eyes. Finally, Varela broke the silence. "He did not beat them with strength," she said quietly. "He did not beat them with speed or claws or armor. He beat them with patience. He studied them, learned them, and then destroyed them." She turned to face the other instructors. "He simply refused to stop until they were all dead." She looked back at the screen, where Danny was sitting calmly in the clearing, waiting for the extraction shuttle. "That," she said, "is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen." The graduation ceremony was held in the Great Hall of the Academy. This massive chamber had witnessed thousands of ceremonies over hundreds of years. The walls were lined with the names of legendary hunters who had earned the right to call themselves Apex graduates. Soon, new names would join them. Danny Cole stood among the surviving trainees. Out of the 200 who had started the program, only 47 remained. The rest had washed out, quit, or died during training. It was a harsh reminder of how dangerous this profession truly was. Danny wore the standard academy uniform, but his body told a different story. Scars marked his arms and face where claws and fangs had left their marks. His hands were rough and calloused from months of combat training. His eyes held a steady calm that had not been there when he first arrived. He was not the same person who had stepped off that transport shuttle 6 months ago. The other trainees stood around him in formation. Danny noticed that they left a small gap between themselves and him. Not out of disrespect, but out of something else. Something that looked like caution. Commander Varela walked to the podium at the front of the hall. Her scales shimmered under the ceremonial lights. Her forearms were folded behind her back in the formal stance of the Kethari military. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "Today marks the completion of another training cycle," she began. "Those of you standing in this hall have proven yourselves worthy of the title you are about to receive. You have faced challenges that would break most beings. You have survived tests that kill the unprepared. You have earned your place among the hunters." She pressed a control on the podium, and a holographic display appeared, showing the rankings of all surviving trainees. Names scrolled past in order from lowest to highest score. "The standard graduates will be called first," Varela continued. "These hunters have completed all requirements and demonstrated acceptable levels of skill." Names were called. Trainees stepped forward, received their insignias, and returned to formation. Danny watched as aliens from dozens of species were recognized for their achievements. Then the display changed. A new category appeared at the top. "Elite graduates," Varela announced. "These hunters have exceeded standard requirements and shown exceptional ability in multiple areas." More names were called. Torvin stepped forward and received his elite insignia. The Goroth nodded at Danny as he returned to his place. Syrah was called next. The Kethari female who had once laughed at Danny now walked past him with respect in her eyes. Finally, the display changed again. A single category appeared at the very top, glowing gold. Apex Hunter. The room went completely silent. This was the highest designation the Academy could give. Only a handful of hunters in each generation earned this title. They were considered the deadliest beings in the galaxy, capable of hunting any creature anywhere. Varela's voice was different now, slower, more deliberate. "For the first time in Academy history," she said, "a human has achieved Apex Hunter status." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Danny felt every eye in the room turned toward him. "Human trainee Danny Cole," Varela called. "Step forward." Danny walked toward the podium. His boots echoed in the silent hall. As he moved through the crowd, something strange happened. The other hunters stepped back. Not much, just a few inches. But it was noticeable. These were beings with claws that could tear through metal, with armor that could stop bullets, with venom that could kill in seconds. They were the deadliest predators in the known universe, and they were making room for the human. Danny reached the podium and stood at attention before Commander Varela. She looked down at him, her yellow eyes studying his face. 6 months ago, she had called him soft. She had called him weak. She had guaranteed that he would fail. Now she reached into a ceremonial box and withdrew the Apex Hunter insignia. It was a golden badge shaped like a predator's claw, the symbol of the highest hunters in the galaxy. She pinned it to his chest. The metal was warm against his skin. "Congratulations, Hunter Cole," Varela said. The words seemed difficult for her to speak. "You have earned this." Danny saluted. "Thank you, Commander." Varela did not step back. Instead, she spoke again, her voice low enough that only Danny could hear. "I underestimated your kind. I thought you were prey animals pretending to be hunters." "I was wrong. Many make that mistake," Danny replied quietly. "Your species has no natural weapons. No claws, no armor, no venom. Your bodies are fragile. Your senses are limited." She paused. "How? How did humans become the dominant life form on your planet?" Danny thought about the question. He thought about his ancestors, the early humans who had faced a world filled with predators far more dangerous than themselves. He thought about how they had survived, how they had thrived, how they had eventually conquered their entire world. "Because we never gave up," he said. "Because when something bigger and stronger tried to kill us, we did not run away and hide. We learned about it. We studied it. We figured out its weaknesses. And then we killed it." Varela's mandibles clicked slowly. "And if you could not kill it?" "Then we kept trying until we could. We made better tools. We developed better strategies. We passed our knowledge to the next generation. It might take years. It might take centuries. But eventually, we always won. Always." Danny looked out at the crowd of alien hunters. Creatures that could kill him in a dozen different ways. Creatures that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. "There is nothing left on Earth that we cannot hunt," Danny said. "Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, we killed them all. Or we captured them and put them in cages. Every predator that once hunted us is either extinct, endangered, or living only because we allow it to live." He turned back to face Varela. "And now we have come to the stars." Varela stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something no one in the Great Hall expected. She took a step back. The Supreme Commander of the Galactic Hunter Academy, the deadliest HFY warrior alive, stepped away from the human. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone not watching closely. But Danny saw it, and he understood what it meant. She was not making room. She was hesitating. Danny turned and walked back through the crowd of hunters. They parted before him, creating a path to his place in the formation. No one spoke. No one moved to block his way. These beings, the apex predators of 100 different worlds, watched him pass with something in their eyes that Danny had not seen when he first arrived. It was not contempt. It was not amusement. It was not even respect. It was recognition. They finally understood what humans really were. Not weak little creatures who had stumbled into space by accident. Not prey animals playing at being hunters. Humans were the most dangerous hunters the universe had ever produced. They had no claws, so they made knives. They had no armor, so they made shields. They had no venom, so they made poison. Every advantage that other species were born with, humans had created for themselves through sheer determination and intelligence. And unlike every other predator in the galaxy, humans did not know how to quit. They did not give up when they lost. They did not stop when they were hurt. They did not surrender when they were. They just kept coming, learning, adapting, getting stronger. Until nothing could stand against them. Danny took his place in the formation. Around him, the greatest hunters in the galaxy stood in silence. Somewhere on the observation deck, officials from dozens of worlds were recording this moment. The first human apex hunter. The beginning of a new era. Commander Varela returned to the podium and completed the ceremony with standard words about honor and duty. But everyone knew that something had changed. The universe was not the same as it had been that morning. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomer to be mocked and dismissed. They were hunters now. True hunters. And the galaxy was finally beginning to understand what that meant. As the ceremony ended and the trainees filed out of the great hall, Torvin fell into step beside Danny. What happens now? The Gorath asked. Danny looked up at the stars visible through the station's windows. Thousands of worlds were out there. Millions of challenges waiting to be faced. An entire galaxy that still thought humans were weak. He smiled. Now, he said, we show them what we can do. The first human apex hunter walked out of the academy and into the future. Behind him, the greatest predators in the galaxy watched him go. And for the first time in their lives, they were afraid of prey.